Hi, my name's Isla, I'm 18, and I just graduated high school. You'd think that would be one of the proudest moments for my parents, but they weren't there. They told me they were too tired to come, and for a few hours, I actually believed them, until I saw the photos. My parents were smiling at my sister's party instead of my graduation. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for more family drama and emotional courage stories. I want you to picture this with me. The sound of names being called, the shuffle of gowns brushing across the gym floor, the bright lights that made everything feel bigger than life. That was my graduation night. A night I had waited for, dreamed about, worked so hard to reach. My hands were trembling as I clutched the little note card with my name printed on it, waiting for the announcer to call me up. And through all that noise, all that excitement, my eyes kept drifting to two empty chairs in the front row. Chairs that were supposed to belong to my parents. They had promised me. The night before, my mom hugged me and said she wouldn't miss it for the world. My dad gave a quick nod, the way he always does, and said, "We'll be there." And yet, when my name was called, when the cheers erupted from the crowd, when the flash of cameras captured the moment I had worked for my entire teenage life, those two chairs stayed empty. I remember telling myself, maybe traffic held them up. Or maybe my dad got stuck at work late. Or maybe mom wasn't feeling well, and they just couldn't make it in time. My stomach was tight with hope, clinging to excuses as if they could somehow soften the disappointment. But deep down I knew. When the ceremony ended, I walked out with the rest of my class. Some girls in front of me were taking photos with their families, fathers lifting daughters in their arms, moms fixing caps and hugging so tightly their makeup smeared. Everyone was laughing, shouting, calling names, gathering for group pictures. And me? I walked out into the parking lot with no one to wave me over, no arms open for me. I forced a smile when classmates asked where my parents were, saying, "Oh, they're just running late." I don't know how I managed to get through the next hour. I stood with friends, holding my diploma case, nodding along, pretending like I wasn't breaking inside. I even asked a friend's mom to take a picture of me, just so I'd have something. I laughed at their jokes, posed with the class banner, and tried my hardest to act like I wasn't the only one who had been left behind. When I finally got home, the house was quiet. My cap was crooked, my gown wrinkled, my makeup smudged from tears I didn't want anyone to see. I placed my diploma case on the kitchen table, expecting maybe a note, a little card, something. But the table was bare. I sat in the silence, trying to eat leftover pizza, trying to tell myself it wasn't a big deal. People miss things sometimes. Life gets busy. Maybe they'll apologize when they get back. But the hours ticked by. 10 o'clock. 11. Midnight. Still nothing. It was around 12:30 when my phone buzzed. A notification lit up the screen. It was from Facebook. I didn't think much of it at first. Probably another graduation post from one of my friends. But when I clicked it open, my breath caught in my chest. There they were, my parents. My mom, wearing the bright blue dress she had bought the week before. My dad in his best shirt, his arm around my little sister. Balloons in the background, a cake on the table, streamers hanging from the ceiling. And all three of them smiling, laughing, celebrating as if nothing else in the world mattered. The caption read, "So proud of our girl. Sweet 16 for our beautiful daughter tonight." My heart stopped. They hadn't been too tired. They hadn't been stuck at work. They hadn't gotten lost or sick or anything else I had convinced myself of. No, they had chosen. They had chosen my sister's party over my graduation. I just sat there, staring at the photos, scrolling through them one after another. My sister with her friends, holding sparklers in the backyard. My mom laughing while handing out slices of cake. My dad posing with his arm around the birthday girl. And me nowhere in sight. The worst part wasn't even that they missed it. It was how happy they looked without me. Like I hadn't even crossed their minds. Like my milestone, my once-in-a-lifetime night, was nothing compared to a cake and some candles. I threw my phone down on the couch, my chest tight, my eyes burning. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, cry, throw something. Anything to let out the ache that was building in my chest. But instead, I just sat there, frozen, the house spinning around me in silence. I kept replaying every memory in my head. The soccer games where my mom said she was too busy to drive me, but somehow had time to bake cookies for my sister's bake sale. The spelling bee where my dad said he'd come, but later told me he forgot. Every single moment where I thought, maybe next time they'll show up. And now this. The final proof that maybe they never would. At some point, I went upstairs, still wearing my gown, and looked in the mirror. My cap was tilted, my hair sticking out, my eyes red and puffy. I didn't look like a graduate. I looked like someone who had been fooled, lied to, betrayed. I laid on my bed with the phone in my hand, scrolling again through the photos, torturing myself. The comments from relatives poured in. She looks gorgeous. Such a special night. You must be so proud. And my parents were replying with hearts, exclamation marks, words of joy. Pride. They felt pride tonight, but not for me. It wasn't until nearly 3 a.m. that the front door opened. I heard their laughter before I saw them, muffled voices, the clink of heels against the floor. My sister's voice rang out, giddy and full of energy. Best birthday ever. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't greet them. I didn't say a word. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my skin. And in that silence, I made a promise to myself. This was the night everything changed. The night I realized I couldn't keep waiting for them to choose me. If they wanted to pretend I didn't matter, then fine. I'd show them just how much I didn't need them. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come from shouting, or fighting, or begging someone to see your worth. Sometimes it comes from silence. From letting the truth speak louder than anything you could ever say. And that night, the night my parents lied, was the night I decided I'd never let them have that power over me again. I woke up the next morning with the same heaviness in my chest, the kind that doesn't go away after sleep. My eyes were swollen, my pillow damp. I lay there for a while, staring at the sunlight cutting through the blinds, wishing it could burn away the memory of last night. But the truth clung to me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the image of my parents smiling in those pictures, arms wrapped around my sister, acting like their whole world was perfect, while I sat alone in my graduation gown. The smell of pancakes drifted upstairs, my mom's Saturday tradition. Usually it was comforting. That morning, it made my stomach twist. I forced myself out of bed, changed out of the wrinkled gown I had never bothered to hang up, and walked downstairs. They were all there, gathered around the table. My dad reading the paper, my mom flipping pancakes, my sister scrolling on her phone, still glowing from her party, and me, walking into a scene that looked so normal, so ordinary. You'd never guess the storm brewing beneath the surface. Morning, sweetheart. Mom said without looking up. Sweetheart. The word almost made me laugh. She said it the same way she always did, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't left me standing alone on the biggest night of my life. Morning, I muttered, sliding into a chair. My sister glanced up, smirking. You missed a fun night. Everyone said it was the best Sweet 16 they'd ever been to. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard it nearly bled. She wasn't being cruel. She was just bragging. But every word dug into me like glass shards. Dad folded his paper. So, how was the graduation? I stared at him. The question hung in the air, heavy, sharp. He asked it so casually, like he hadn't known where I was, like he hadn't chosen a party over it. It was fine, I said, my voice flat. You'd know if you were there. The clink of the spatula against the pan was the only sound for a few seconds. My mom froze, then turned, a strained smile on her face. Honey, we explained. We were just exhausted. The timing of your sister's party. Exhausted? I cut her off, my voice shaking. You were exhausted, so you threw a party? That makes sense. My sister frowned, her fork pausing midair. Dad sighed, rubbing his forehead like I was the one making things difficult. Isla, he said in that firm, dismissive tone I knew too well. This isn't the time. Let's just eat breakfast and move on. Move on. That was his answer to everything. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the tile. My appetite was gone. You're right. Let's move on. That's what you've been doing my whole life, isn't it? And with that, I left the table. I shut myself in my room, my hands shaking as I scrolled back through the photos on my phone. My friends had uploaded pictures from graduation. Their parents holding bouquets, snapping shots of diplomas, hugging like they couldn't be prouder. And then I'd swipe to the photos my parents posted. Balloons, candles, birthday cake. Two worlds. And I wasn't part of theirs. It was then that I noticed something I hadn't before. In one of the photos, my mom was standing next to my aunt, holding a slice of cake. My aunt had commented, "So glad I could celebrate with you guys tonight." That word, tonight. Not Friday. Not Saturday. Tonight. Which meant they hadn't even bothered to schedule the party on another day. They knew my graduation was that evening. They scheduled my sister's sweet 16 on the same night. I felt my throat close up. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad timing. It was a choice. The bitter truth hit me harder than I expected. For years, I had excused their behavior. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they were stressed. Maybe it wasn't about me. But now I couldn't deny it. They didn't just skip my graduation. They planned another celebration that very same night. My stomach churned. I wanted to confront them again, to scream, to demand answers. But something stopped me. The look on their faces at breakfast told me all I needed to know. They weren't sorry. And if I brought it up again, they'd twist it around, make me feel like I was overreacting, like I was the problem. So instead, I grabbed my journal from the nightstand. It was old, the cover frayed, pages filled with half-written poems, doodles, and thoughts I never shared with anyone. But that morning, I didn't write poems. I wrote the truth. Every ugly detail. They chose her. Again. And this time, they didn't even hide it. They wanted me to see. Maybe they wanted me to finally realize I'll never be enough for them. The words spilled out like a confession I'd been holding back for years. When I finally stopped, my hands were cramped, my heart pounding, but my mind was clearer than it had been in a long time. That night, I stayed in my room while the rest of the family watched a movie downstairs. I could hear them laughing through the floorboards. At one point, my mom called up, "Isla, don't you want to come join us?" I didn't answer. Instead, I scrolled through the comments on their posts again. Relatives congratulating, neighbors saying how wonderful the night looked, my parents basking in the praise. Each smile in those pictures felt like a knife. But then, an idea crept into my mind. A dangerous, tempting idea. If they wanted to pretend in public that everything was perfect, that they were proud, that they were the picture of a happy family, maybe I could be the one to show the cracks. I didn't know how yet. But I knew this. Their smiles were a mask. And masks have a way of slipping when someone tugs hard enough. For the first time in hours, a small spark lit inside me. Not joy. Not hope. Something colder, sharper. A sense that maybe, just maybe, I had a little power after all. The next few days were heavy with silence. My parents didn't bring up graduation again. They acted like it hadn't happened, like skipping it was no big deal. My sister floated around the house, bragging about the gifts she got, the fun she had, replaying videos from her party on her phone. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. At meals, I barely spoke. In the evenings, I stayed upstairs. They noticed, of course, but they didn't press. Maybe they thought I'd get over it, like I always did. But I wasn't getting over it this time. One afternoon, as I walked past the living room, I overheard my parents talking. My mom's voice was low, but I caught enough. "She'll be fine. She's always been the independent one." "She's just being dramatic," Dad replied. "Give her a week, she'll forget about it." Forget about it. That was the moment the last piece of me snapped. They really believed my pain was temporary, just some teenage mood swing I'd outgrow. They couldn't see that this wasn't just about one night. It was about years of being second place, years of being the afterthought. I went back to my room, sat on the bed, and stared at the graduation photo my friend's mom had taken of me. I was smiling in it, but my eyes looked tired. Empty. Like even then I knew something was missing. That photo became a reminder. A symbol of the truth behind their smiles. Because while they laughed, while they posted, while they pretended, my truth was different. And I wasn't going to keep it hidden anymore. That was the bitter truth. Their smiles weren't for me. They never were. And if I wanted to survive in this family, I had to stop chasing them, stop begging for scraps of affection. The more I sat with that realization, the colder I felt. But strangely, also stronger. Because when the mask finally falls, you see people for who they really are. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. And I had finally seen my parents for who they were. I didn't sleep that night. My body lay still in bed, but my mind was racing in 1,000 directions. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their smiles. The way my parents' faces glowed in those photos with my sister. The way they leaned into her like she was the only child they'd ever had. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the deliberate act of hiding it from me. They could have told me the truth. They could have admitted they chose her over me. But instead they lied. They said they were too tired. Too tired to sit for a couple of hours in a folding chair and clap for me as I walked across that stage. That thought burned in my chest like fire. And somewhere in that sleepless night, the anger twisted into something darker, determination. I wasn't going to cry in silence anymore. If they wanted to make me invisible, I was going to show them how much damage their forgotten child could cause. The first step. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen. My mom was humming while she scrolled through her phone, probably looking at the photos from last night. My dad was sipping his coffee, flipping through the sports section like nothing was wrong. I sat down at the table, forcing a casual tone. Morning. They both looked up briefly, offered quick smiles, then went back to their distractions. No mention of my graduation. No question about how it went. Not even a congratulations. I clenched my fists under the table. Fine, I thought. If they were going to pretend it didn't matter, then I'd start pretending too. But not in the way they expected. The first step in my revenge wasn't loud or obvious. It was subtle. I started gathering small pieces of information. When my mom left her laptop open, I skimmed through her emails. I found the planning messages for my sister's celebration dinner. They'd gone out after her event, dinner, cake, the works. For me? Nothing. Not even takeout leftovers. That detail hit harder than I expected, but it also gave me fuel. Quiet withdrawal. Over the next few days, I pulled back. Not in a way they could easily call me out on, but enough for them to notice the distance. I stopped eating dinner with them. I'd take my plate to my room, claiming homework or being too tired. When they asked how my day was, I gave short answers. My sister, of course, soaked up the attention. She'd sit at the table and chatter about her upcoming summer internship, her friends, her plans. They encouraged her, praised her, laughed at her jokes. I'd sit upstairs and listen to the faint hum of their voices through the vents, feeling the sting but also sharpening my resolve. Every night, I jotted things down in a notebook. Not just how I felt, but ideas. Ways to make them see what they'd done. My revenge didn't have to be violent or dramatic. It just had to be unforgettable. A chance encounter. One Saturday afternoon, I went to the library to escape the tension at home. As I sat flipping through a book, I overheard a group of younger kids talking about a community award ceremony coming up. Students could nominate peers for achievements, and there would be local press coverage. That's when it hit me. My parents had ignored my accomplishments, dismissed my graduation like it was nothing. But what if I put myself in a spotlight so bright they couldn't avoid it? What if everyone else celebrated me, while they sat in silence, realizing they'd missed their chance? I smiled to myself, the first genuine smile I'd had in days. The plan was forming, planting seeds. I started volunteering more at the local community center. It wasn't just about revenge. I genuinely enjoyed helping younger kids with homework and activities, but I also knew it would put me in the running for that award. I showed up early, stayed late, and made sure my work got noticed. At home, I didn't mention any of it. If my parents asked where I was going, I gave vague answers. Just out. Library. Hanging with friends. They didn't press for details. They rarely did when it came to me. But I noticed small shifts. My mom started knocking on my door more often, asking if I wanted to join her at the grocery store or watch TV. My dad tried cracking jokes with me. My sister rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed that I wasn't fawning over her latest updates. It was working. They felt me slipping away, and it scared them. The breaking point. One evening, about a month later, I came home from volunteering to find my parents waiting at the kitchen table. My mom's phone was face down, a rare sight. My dad's paper was untouched. Isla, we need to talk, my mom said softly. I raised an eyebrow, playing innocent. About what? My dad leaned forward. We feel like you've been distant. Is everything okay? For a second, I almost laughed. Distant? They were just now noticing? I shrugged. I'm fine. But the calmness in my voice clearly unnerved them. My mom's eyes darted to my dad's, silently begging him to say something else. He cleared his throat. Listen, about your graduation. My heart stopped for a beat. They were finally bringing it up. But before he could continue, my sister waltzed into the kitchen, holding up her phone. Guys, look at this outfit I found for my internship dinner. Isn't it perfect? And just like that, the conversation shifted. My parents' eyes lit up. They cooed over her outfit, offering opinions, laughing together. My dad's unfinished sentence hung in the air like a ghost. That was it. The final straw. The public stage. When the community award nominations opened, I submitted my name quietly. A week later, I learned I'd been shortlisted. The ceremony would be covered in the local paper, with photos, interviews, the whole deal. I didn't tell my parents. Not a word. Instead, I invited a few close friends, people who had supported me through everything. They promised to cheer me on, to make the night unforgettable. The day of the ceremony, I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my dress. My stomach churned with nerves, but underneath it all was a steady pulse of satisfaction. Tonight, I wasn't just going to be seen. I was going to shine in a way they couldn't erase. The twist. At the venue I spotted them. My parents and my sister. They weren't supposed to be there. But apparently, word had spread in the community, and curiosity had dragged them out. They looked surprised to see me at the front with other nominees. My mom's jaw dropped. My dad blinked rapidly, as if trying to piece it together. My sister's expression soured. Her perfect little spotlight suddenly threatened. When they called my name for the award, the room erupted in applause. My friends whistled, the organizers clapped me on the back, and cameras flashed. I walked onto that stage, head high, heart pounding. From the corner of my eye, I saw my parents. They were clapping too, but slowly, awkwardly, their faces pale. For once, I wasn't the invisible child. I was the one in the spotlight, the one being celebrated. And they had no choice but to sit there and watch. The applause still echoed in my ears as I stepped off the stage, clutching the plaque they'd handed me. My smile felt steady, but inside, I was trembling, not with fear, but with a raw, charged energy that I couldn't contain. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. I was celebrated. And the best part? My parents had no choice but to sit there and watch. I caught a glimpse of them in the crowd as people came up to congratulate me. My mom's expression was tight, like she couldn't decide if she wanted to cry or clap harder. My dad gave me a stiff nod when our eyes met, but it was awkward, forced. My sister looked furious, her arms crossed, her lips pressed in a thin line. For a moment, I let myself soak it in. The warmth of strangers praising me, the buzz of cameras flashing, the way my friends cheered so loud the announcer chuckled. But underneath the glow of the moment, I felt a tension building. I knew this wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. Because once the clapping stopped, once the lights dimmed and we went home, there would be consequences. The ride home. After the ceremony ended, my parents insisted I ride back with them. My friends offered me a seat in their car, but I shook my head. Part of me wanted the confrontation. I wanted to hear what they had to say. The car was quiet at first. My dad drove, his hands tight on the wheel. My mom sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone like she couldn't find the right words. My sister was beside me in the back, glaring out the window. Finally, my mom cleared her throat. Congratulations, honey. That was unexpected. Unexpected. The word hit me like a slap. Not proud. Not amazing. Not even great job. Just unexpected. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thanks, I muttered. My dad shifted in his seat. We didn't know you were doing all that volunteer work. You should have told us. I turned my gaze toward the dark blur of houses passing by outside the window. I figured you were too tired to care. The silence that followed was sharp, like glass. My mom let out a small gasp. My sister scoffed under her breath. My dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. And that silence said everything. The eruption. When we got home, I headed straight for my room. But before I could shut the door, my mom's voice rang out. Isla, wait. I froze, my hand on the knob. Slowly I turned. They were all in the living room. My mom standing with her arms crossed. My dad perched on the edge of the couch. My sister lounging with a smug grin. My mom's eyes were wet. You can't just throw words like that around. You don't understand how much we've done for you. Something inside me snapped. Weeks of bottled-up anger surged forward, and the words came spilling out. Done for me? You couldn't even show up to my graduation. You lied to my face. Said you were too tired, then went to her event like it was the most important night of the year. My dad's voice boomed louder than I'd ever heard. Watch your tone. No, I shouted, my voice shaking. I'm not watching anything anymore. Do you have any idea what it felt like? Sitting there, scanning the crowd, waiting for you to show up, and then coming home to find out you weren't tired. You just didn't care enough about me. My mom's lip quivered. That's not true. Then what is the truth? I demanded. Because it looks a lot like you only care about her. I pointed at my sister, who smirked like she was enjoying the show. She leaned back and said in a sing-song voice, maybe if you weren't so dramatic all the time, they'd want to come to your stuff. That did it. My whole body shook. Dramatic? You got a dinner, a celebration, photos, speeches, while I got excuses. And I'm supposed to be the dramatic one. The cracks show. For the first time, my dad didn't rush to defend my sister. His eyes darted between us. And I saw the flicker of doubt there. My mom's shoulders sagged, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. But instead of apologizing, she whispered, we just thought she needed us more. She's always been more fragile. I stared at her, stunned. Fragile? She's the golden child. Everything she does gets praised. You bend over backwards for her and I'm just, what? The backup kid. No one answered. The silence pressed down on me like a weight. My sister shifted uncomfortably, suddenly not so smug. My dad rubbed his temples. My mom wiped her face, but the guilt was etched there, plain as day. For once, they couldn't hide behind excuses. They couldn't dismiss me with tired smiles and half-hearted words. My decision. That night, after the shouting and tears, I sat on my bed with the award on my nightstand, staring at it. I should have felt triumphant. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd forced them to see me. But instead, I felt hollow. Winning hadn't filled the empty space their absence left. Exposing their favoritism hadn't made the pain go away. I realized something then. This was my breaking point. Not just with them, but with myself. I couldn't keep begging for their attention. Couldn't keep clawing for scraps of love that should have been freely given. I needed to take control of my life, not just react to their choices. The morning after. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. My dad left early for work, without saying goodbye. My sister avoided me completely. My mom hovered near my door once, but she didn't come in. I sat at my desk, pen in hand, writing in my notebook. But this time, I wasn't writing plans for revenge. I was writing plans for myself. College applications, job ideas, ways to save money, dreams I'd pushed aside because I thought I needed their approval. For the first time, I saw clearly. My revenge wasn't just about making them feel guilty. It was about breaking free. About proving, to them, to the world, and most importantly, to myself, that I didn't need their validation to shine. And that realization was the most powerful revenge of all. The morning light streamed through my curtains, cutting across my desk where my notebook still lay open from the night before. I hadn't even realized I'd fallen asleep with the pen still in my hand. The pages were filled with ideas, lists, half-scribbled plans, tiny fragments of a future that, for the first time, felt like mine. I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. My chest felt lighter, though there was still an ache buried deep inside. That ache wasn't going to vanish overnight. But what had changed was me. I wasn't going to wait for them anymore. I wasn't going to shrink myself, hoping one day my parents might finally see me. No, I was done waiting. If I was going to walk away, it had to be on my terms. The first move, downstairs, The house was unusually quiet. My sister was still asleep. My dad had left early again. My mom sat at the kitchen table with her coffee, staring out the window. She looked up when I walked in, as if she'd been rehearsing something to say. "Morning," she offered, her voice tentative. "Morning," I replied. The air between us was heavy, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of starting the conversation. I grabbed some toast, poured myself juice, and sat at the other end of the table. She cleared her throat. I don't know how things got so bad. I chewed slowly, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I said, "You do know. You just didn't want to admit it." Her eyes filled with tears, but I stood before they could fall. I wasn't ready for apologies. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That was the first move, setting a boundary. For once, I wasn't going to sit there and play the role of the forgotten child desperate for scraps of affection. A secret job. Over the next week, I made a decision that would change everything. I walked into a small cafe a few blocks from school and asked the manager if they were hiring. The place was warm and bustling, with the smell of fresh coffee and pastries filling the air. The manager, a kind woman with sharp eyes, asked if I had experience. "No," I admitted, "but I learn fast." Something in my voice must have convinced her, because she handed me an application. 2 days later, I had a job. I didn't tell my parents. Not because I wanted to hide forever, but because I wanted something that belonged only to me. Every shift I worked, every dollar I earned, it was mine. Proof that I could build a life without waiting for them to hand me permission. Cracks in the foundation. But keeping it secret wasn't easy. My mom grew suspicious when I started coming home late. One evening, she confronted me as I walked through the door, apron still tucked in my bag. "Where have you been?" she asked, arms folded. I took a deep breath. Working. Working. Her brows knitted. "At what?" "A cafe," I said simply. Her face fell. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" I met her gaze steadily. "Because it's mine. And I don't want you to have a say in it." The words hit harder than I expected. She opened her mouth, then shut it, speechless. For the first time, I felt a strange power shift. She was used to me shrinking. Now I was standing tall, even if my voice shook. The test. One Friday night, my sister decided to throw a party while my parents were out. The music was loud, the laughter louder, and the mess spread across every corner of the living room. I tried to stay in my room, but eventually, someone spilled a drink outside my door. I stormed downstairs. "Seriously? Do you have to trash the whole place?" My sister rolled her eyes. "Relax, Isla. It's just a party." "It's our house," I shot back. "You don't get to treat it like your playground." Her friends laughed nervously, sensing the tension. She smirked. "What are you gonna do? Tell Mom and Dad?" I stared at her for a long moment, then shook my head. "No. I don't care enough to." I turned and walked away, leaving her stunned. That was the real test. Not reacting, not trying to win their approval by being the good kid. I wasn't competing anymore. The letter. As weeks passed, I saved money from the cafe, little by little. Enough for gas, enough for a deposit if I wanted to move out when the time came. Then one night, I sat at my desk and began writing. Not in my notebook this time, but on a plain sheet of paper. A letter. I wrote about the years I felt unseen, about the graduation they skipped, about the lies that cut deeper than they probably understood. But I also wrote about me. The person I was becoming, the independence I was claiming, the future I was choosing for myself. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a plea. It was a declaration. When I finished, I sealed it in an envelope and slid it under their bedroom door. Their response. The next morning, I found my mom waiting in the kitchen again. The letter sat in front of her, opened and crumpled from where she'd clutched it. Her voice cracked. "Isla, I don't know how to fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, I saw not just my mom, but a woman who was flawed, who had made choices that hurt me, but who was human. "I don't think you can," I said quietly. "But I can fix me. And that has to be enough." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. I wasn't angry, I was resolute. Walking away. A month later, I packed a small bag and stood by the front door. I wasn't moving out permanently yet, but I was going to stay with a friend for the summer. I needed space, distance, a chance to breathe without the weight of their favoritism pressing on me. My dad came downstairs just as I was lacing my shoes. He stared at the bag, then at me. "So this is it?" "No," I said firmly. "This is me taking a step. On my terms." He nodded slowly, his face unreadable. My mom appeared in the doorway, tears streaming. My sister lingered at the top of the stairs, arms crossed but eyes uncertain. I opened the door, the cool air hitting my face like freedom. For once, I wasn't leaving in anger or defeat. I was leaving because I chose to. And that made all the difference. My terms. As I walked down the street, bag over my shoulder, I thought about everything that had led me here. The lies, the favoritism, the anger, the hollow victories. All of it had shaped me, but none of it defined me anymore. This was my life, my path, my voice. I wasn't just walking away from them. I was walking toward myself. On my terms. Always.